All right, Devin.
All right, what's going on, man?
Not much, dude. Thanks for coming in.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
It's nice to meet you, too. We have, so I guess we met kind of virtually.
Yeah.
Over email and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
So you ran into Trent at a networking group?
I did. So, well, one of my buddies, Jordan, actually, he introduced me to Trent. Trent reached out to me and stuff like that. I had a really good conversation with him and just kind of talked shop and told me I should come meet you, man. So,
Awesome.
so
Hell yeah. So how we kind of go into this is, obviously we want our potential users to see and hear from the businesses. But I think there's also a cool opportunity to talk to future business owners right now.
Right.
Even if that's just one freaking person who's
right.
kind of scared to jump.
Yeah.
So I do like to kind of get into some of the business side and ask some
for sure.
entrepreneur questions and things like that.
Yeah.
So give us your background, Evan. Where are you from? How'd you get to where you're at right now?
So I mean, I have to get way down in the weeds, but originally from New York, moved down here to Tennessee.
Where at in New York?
Upstate New York, so like in between Rochester, Syracuse, kind of western New York. Up there by the lake.
It's gorgeous up there, dude.
Dude, yeah, fall time is super pretty.
Yes.
Do love it. Do not miss the winters.
Yeah.
Do love that about down here. I never thought a place would actually make me appreciate snow again. It's nice now. You get one snowfall a year down here, so kind of enjoy it. But I moved down here about 10 years ago for music, did bands and stuff like that, and stuff like that. While I was doing bands, I was in property management, so doing that side, more on the maintenance side to start off with. I learned how homes work, all that good stuff, fixing a bunch of stuff, all that good stuff, and then got into the management side of that, and then weirdly enough, those two kind of roles of it kind of culminated into like me feeling good enough about starting my own business. So I'd been looking for like business things to start off with. Where could I like kind of put my skills of what I know? And I was happening to be buying a house and had a home inspection. I didn't even know it was a thing. And then started following the guy around, and I was super intrigued. And he was nice enough to be my mentor for about 6 months to a year. So
cool.
Yeah, so got into it. Got my license, like went on a bunch with him, got my license in 2019, and then did it part-time for the first year, and then for the past 4 years when I made the jump and been doing it full-time ever since. So.
What was the trigger that helped you make the jump full-time?
Oh man, well,
because that's the scary part.
Well, yeah, man, I gotta give a big shout out to my wife. She was a big key component in that. She was probably more brave than I was about it. She kept pushing me to, get my license, all that stuff, go through that whole process, and then was super awesome as far as just, we had to cut down to one income. She had to be the breadwinner for a while I tried to build it, and she was super patient with it. And so there was that, and then just really, man, I like, when I was talking with my mentor, just the whole thing of like, man, I make my own schedule, like, it was weird. We were meeting in a bar the first time I was meeting him. The fact that I was on lunch break at my job, and the fact that he was like, "You want a beer?" And I'm like, "No, I can't. I'm on lunch break." He's like, "Well, you're doing the wrong thing. Then. Like, you should be able to get a beer whenever you want."
Yeah,
stuff like that. So I was like, "All right, that's cool." So yeah,
that's awesome.
So yeah, just little stuff like that. Like,
yeah,
Like,
dude.
yeah, I gotta do it.
You make a good point though. It's like, I think, and that's pretty common to hear, which is you had, your wife was kind of the one saying like, "This is the time. Yeah. Take the risk a little bit.
Absolutely.
We're good. We can cut where we need to in order to try to make this thing happen."
Yeah, absolutely.
But it comes down to a timing thing, It
really is. It's interesting too. I talked to my brother who's trying to do the same thing, but his just situation with family and stuff like that. He's got kids now and stuff like that. It's much, not that he can't do it. It's just more, it's harder than 100%. The timing I ended up doing it, and we didn't have kids at the time, so it was just, it's all timing. And but you gotta have that. You gotta almost have that person. I tell a lot of people who want to get a home inspection, that's usually my first question to them is like, okay, what's your financial status? Because it's not going to come right away.
Right.
You don't get as many inspections as you think right off. It's a slow climb. So you got to have some kind of person there to kind of support you financially and mentally too. It's going to beat you up a bunch. So
dude, that's not the damn truth, man. Jesus.
It's owning your own business it's insane. I tell my wife all the time, I'm like, I don't know if I need a therapist because I feel like I just go to therapy with myself every day. It's just the mental gymnastics of talking to yourself like down off the ledge a lot of times of like
100%.
Yeah, absolutely. So.
And I think that is a huge thing for current entrepreneurs who are, 5 years in business or below. I think after that, you kind of start to get a system and people around you to help you with some of that
absolutely.
stuff. But before that, you're doing every bit of the business. And it's like you, at least for me, I'd be looking around at all these businesses and not thinking that they had the same struggles that I had. And then come to find out they all had the exact same struggles.
Absolutely.
And it's like kind of like that's a big part of these conversations because
for sure.
When I was in like my first year, 2 years, where you're doing everything and you have no full-time help, maybe you have some part-time help, whatever it is. I listen to a lot of podcasts or a lot of books.
Absolutely.
There's a ton of good information out there from like the guys who are super rich and have huge businesses, but some of they're so far removed from where I was and where I am. It's like it's hard to apply some of the stuff they're saying.
I completely agree with that. Like the money podcasts I listen to, it's almost like they talk about like they're talking about everything after you're rich almost, and it's just like, all right, I just want to know. I'm at the point.
How do I get rich?
I need to get rid of it. It's almost like this weird lump of sum just magically comes to you, and then it's all like, oh, you got to do this and that.
And then I got a clear path.
Yeah, absolutely.
But how do I get there?
Yeah, absolutely.
And dude, that's to your point. I found conversations with business owners in the same spot eliminated like all my stress or worries because I was like, oh, okay, either A, we're doing pretty good, or it's like, okay, these guys are having the same problems I have, or they have this problem, they have a solution, they can help me out trying to solve it.
Absolutely. I think it's super important because it can get lonely. Like I think that was one thing leaving working in an office. I was managing people. That was one thing why I was like, man, I just want to work on my own, and stuff like that. But then you don't think of like, you just do so many mental gymnastics of like, I don't know where I stand, what am I doing, like am I doing it right? And then like the minute networking groups, I definitely like I was saying, like I met Trent through a buddy of mine through BNI, which is a great networking group, organization and stuff like that. But that really, like once I started joining those, I was like, oh, okay, like it's I'm not that far off the mark like I thought I was, and like just talking to people.
Exactly right, dude. And that's the big stressor for me. It was. And then the other thing about like the entrepreneur journey is like, and I've said this before, but it's like 9 a.m. You're like, all right, I'm killing it. I'm on the right track. And then 10 a.m. you're like, I'm gonna be poor and broke.
Oh yeah.
And then 11 a.m.
Every
you're back
hour is
up. And then dude, it's like screw every day is different. Every hour is different. Every hour is stressful.
It is.
Especially if you had a mentor, but especially if you didn't have that.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You're just
throwing stuff at the wall and hoping it sticks.
That's right.
And I'm very, very lucky that I had him in the sense because he almost kind of gave me like at least points I could shoot at. Like he was like, all right, like first 2 years are really gonna suck and you just have to get through it, and there's gonna be a lot of like kind of what we're talking about. There's a lot of this like mental stuff that you're gonna ask yourself. As long as you got someone who can support you, like you'll be fine. Just get through it and it'll get easier. And then once you hit that 5-year mark, which I'm at this year, he's like, you'll just feel like, man, I'm really glad I stuck it out. And he was so true too, because there was points like after that second year, I remember there was one day I was on, I think LinkedIn, I was just looking for like home inspecting jobs. Like I was like, all right, I'm just gonna go work for a home inspecting company. Maybe that's the route I gotta go. And my wife kept being like, no, don't do it. Like just don't do it. And I remember I was about to hit my like semi-application, and she was like, just
don't give up.
Yeah, she's like, just listen to Scooter, don't give up, just let it in. And sure enough, I'm glad I didn't, because I feel like if I had gone down that road, I would just be a home inspector. It wouldn't be. I wouldn't have built a business that I could. So,
dude, I can't tell you how many times I was like looking at LinkedIn for a job.
Absolutely, it's easy. Like you get in your head, and you're like, all right, man. I'm
a piece of shit.
Right. Absolutely. You're right.
I'm an idiot. What did I think? I can't do this.
Yeah, absolutely. There's nothing wrong with your wife being the breadwinner, but it's something when you're as a dude when you're not the breadwinner at the moment, you're just it motivates you and kills you all at the same time.
Yeah,
like you're just like,
it wears on you.
Yeah,
dude, 100%. Especially when you're out and you're like, can I have the credit card?
Yeah.
You're like, oh my god,
I know.
Sucks,
I feel like a teenager again. I'm like,
Mom.
Hey, can I buy this?
Yeah. We don't have the money. You're like, oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah, I forgot. My bad. Go back to my room. Absolutely. So it is, man. It's but you like, again, I'm hitting the 5-year mark, and I'm kind of where you were saying, like where like now I'm trying to span into, okay, let's get people in place. I'm at that point now where it's like I'm too busy for my me just to do everything, and there's things in my business that now I'm learning I have to prioritize and not and stuff like that, and there's things that get missed. Like
That's the next
social
set of
media is always
challenges.
the first thing, right? That you're
Big
just
time,
like,
dude. Yeah.
all right, I don't.
Yeah, like, this sucks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I'm like, all right, I gotta get somebody to do social media because that
Right.
stuff is still super important.
Oh my gosh, yeah, man. I mean, depending on your goals, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
right,
if
right,
your
right.
goal is like, hey, let's get busy enough to where I don't have to worry about anything,
Yeah.
just be a referral business,
Yeah.
that's fine.
Yeah.
Then you might not have
Right.
to do it.
Right.
You know, yeah, that's an interesting thing because year 5 kind of marks that. At least that's what they say is it marks that time where it's you're basically through the are we going to go out of business?
It's okay. Right. Right. Absolutely.
And like you're getting to that point, it's like, all right, cool.
Right.
We should have enough business coming in. We
Right.
have a good enough reputation to where it's going to survive.
Right.
And now I can begin to focus on other things. So talking about milestones in your journey from years 1 to year 5, is that kind of the biggest milestone for you? Or when you look back at your last 5 years, what's one of milestone that kind of stands out as a business owner that you're proud of or?
Yeah, absolutely. I think honestly, it's me and my wife were just kind of recollecting not too long ago that it's kind of it sounds really basic, but the milestone of making it to year 5 and still being in business. I know it's like super like
huge.
but it is like the fact of that was it was a 5-year plan to be where we're at financially. We hit every goal along the way, and like it's great, it's awesome, and now it's like but now it's the next chapter of like I didn't even know if I was gonna get here, so I didn't necessarily think what was after year 5. So now it's all this stuff where I'm like, all right, 5 through 10, all right, this is what I think I'd like to do and stuff like that. So it's exciting, it's super awesome. I look forward to it. I think one of those goals is my wife being able, and that was always one of my things, was like, hey, you supported me, now I want to support you in a way where like she works big corporate job and she's been sick of it for a long time. So the fact of I think we're gonna get to the point where she can now come work for me. And
Amazing.
Yeah, so like help me grow the business in that aspect and stuff like that. So just the fact that she helped me and now I can kind of pay her back of like, hey, let me support you while you kind of figure out what you want to do with your life. So
obviously I work with my wife. I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
I think it makes as long as you have that relationship and as long as there's an understanding there and you know kind of when to cut it and when to be husband and wife, when to work together. It's tough, but I think it's super rewarding.
Yeah, I agree.
And like we were just talking about that the other day. It's like if we didn't work together, I don't know, especially in like the tech startup world, I don't know if I could come home and describe what we did all day.
Right.
You know, it's like
absolutely.
it was busy and it was awesome, but
absolutely.
Like I can't sit here now for 2 hours and talk about it.
It's so funny because I look at that with my wife. I completely agree with you because it's like I grew up. My dad was an engineer and my mom was like a stay-at-home mom. And to listen to my dad come home and talk engineering, like you'd always come to me because my mom would be like, I have no idea.
I don't care.
Yeah. And like, so you come to me and I'd still be like, oh, cool. That's awesome.
Yeah,
that sounds really
sick,
cool,
Dad.
man. That's awesome.
Thanks.
But absolutely right. Like, and but to see like with me and my wife where like you almost just naturally like and again I could just talk people's heads off, so I'm always just talking to my wife about like, oh, this is what happened today and stuff like that. But like she's been very into like just the fact that she's seen it from the ground up and like she's even like created relationships with the realtors I work with, like just naturally like, hey, I'm Devin's wife and stuff like that. Like so it's kind of that stuff where I like feel really comfortable about us. Like we've been really trying to work on. She's been slowly starting to get into like, I think every Friday we go out to lunch. So we go to a separate place that's outside of home.
Nice, dude.
And we just sit down and like talk business. And like that's what I told her. I'm like, we don't have to do this every time. Like obviously it's kind of like, but at least like once a week, like we'll have like a sit down meeting that's at least outside of our comfort zone that we can like be like, hey, this is CEO and
this is business
CFO,
right now.
Right. Like talking instead of just husband and wife. I think that's super important. So.
Yeah, dude. And setting the time aside to do that and all that stuff is good. So you kind of mentioned it earlier, but when you're talking about why you got into business for yourself, a lot of it seemed to be about owning your own time. So what's a typical day look like for you now versus like year 1? Has it changed?
Yeah. Year 1 was a lot of just sitting on the couch. Yeah. It was just like year 1, it was a lot of just at home. It was marketing. That's really all it was.
Trying to get your name out there.
Yeah, and it was crazy because I'm glad I went through that because that was not my strong suit. And that was something that like really scared me of like, definitely it was kind of right off the branch of COVID too. So everybody's still in like this weird like, we don't really meet in person and stuff like that. But like, really pushing yourself to get out there and meet people, especially like realtors and stuff like that, where that changes. Like now it's like, this is my marketing. Like
Right.
it's just little opportunities I can get for marketing.
Heck
Most
yeah.
of it now is I'm either doing 1 or 2 inspections a day. So usually wake up, start an inspection around 9 o'clock. They usually take me around 2.5, 3 hours. And then if I got 1, usually I head home, work on the report, get that done. You're good to go.
Yep.
If I have 2, usually I'll sure up some time the next day just to get all my reports done, get them sent out, and all
Nice.
that good stuff. So it's just a lot of juggling. And
What
stuff
is
like that.
what is a home, like, if you were to hire home inspectors?
Yeah.
So, because I don't know many home inspection companies that do that. Usually, it's like a family operation where the owner of the business is the one doing the inspections.
Yeah.
So, how does like growth look in a
For sure.
home inspection company? What does that look like?
So, for me, I think you find your avenues of people who, I think it's enlightening people a lot of like, I don't think a lot of people know of home inspections, especially in the trade business.
That's crazy.
A lot of people I talk to. So I think it's a lot of like, you're going out, you're meeting with like guys that you knew through trades and stuff like that. At least that's the way I'm thinking I'm going to approach it once I get there to hire somebody. You just kind of talk to them. Actually, I was talking to one of my wife's cousins who does very similar thing that I was doing in property management. And I asked him, I'm like, do you know about home inspecting? Or have you ever thought of it? And he's like, no. I started describing it to him. He's like, actually, it doesn't sound that bad.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah. So like, it's finding someone with the knowledge, the basic knowledge, I think, of like, whether you're a plumber or just somebody who's working in the home services kind of department. And then really it's just then becoming more of like a jack of all trades, master of none. Like, that's why I think sometimes like, it's weird, but like property management maintenance guys are almost can be perfect for it, because it's like you're not really a specialist on any one thing, but you just work on it all a little bit. You know enough to like fix most of the stuff.
Big time.
And then like if you need to, you call a specialist in if you really like have a huge job. But like that's kind of home inspecting, where it's like the metaphor I give all the time. It's like going to your general practitioner for like a yearly physical, like where it's like you're just going to do a really big sweeping overview of a home.
Yeah.
And then you refer out to like specialists and stuff like that. So if you need to.
Yeah, that's a really good way to look at it. That's why I wrote that down, like a yearly physical.
Yeah.
Talking about like a yearly physical and people really not knowing how to maintain their homes is kind of how MyHome was created.
Absolutely.
So can you what, I guess the question is, what's the number one thing that people kind of mess up when it comes to preventative maintenance or just maintaining their home that you see in your reports?
Gutters are the largest thing. Well, and it's really, that's due to like those are usually the biggest thing that people don't take care of that lead to the biggest issues when it comes to a home, and that's usually your foundation, right? So like I always tell brand new homeowners, like the 2 biggest things with foundations, like, because that's always the big thing for people, is water and trees. Those are the 2 biggest things that can cause issues. And it's usually water is by far number 1. So,
and that just moves the foundation? Is that
absolutely? So basically, you got your gutter system. So say your gutters are clogged, and every time it really rains hard, especially here in Tennessee, we get a lot of rain. So that water's just dumping over, landing near the home's foundation and all that good stuff. What you can get is just get some water that gets in between your foundation walls and the dirt itself. They call that hydrostatic pressure. It's just going to push up against your wall there, and it can cause, it can cause cracking, cause stuff like that. Any kind of settlement, anything like that. We just want water as far away from the house as possible. So it seems like really small stuff. I feel like every report I have on there, I'm always recommending like the gutter extenders and stuff like that. And people are like, all my realtors I work with are like, yeah. And I'm like,
all right.
Yeah, but it's just one of those things where it's like, you want that. We'd like to get it a nice like 6 feet away from the house, just keep a nice clear, just so we have a good envelope on the outside of the house that's just keeping water away from the house and all the good stuff. So.
Interesting. What's number 2?
Number 2, people mess up. I'm trying to think as I'm going through, man. I've seen so many jinkies.
Gutters make sense to me.
Yeah, gutters, like, and again, that's really big with like because the big talking point always is foundation, right? That's what everybody wants to make sure is
and that's probably why there's, at least in the home inspection reports I've seen, there's always microbial growth in the crawl space.
And I was actually going to say, so second is vapor barriers, which again are like a very like, on the grand scale of things, very cheap thing
Yeah.
to like make sure that it's we always say about 10-15 years you want to get that kind of get a new one down there.
Yep.
Vapor barrier is just going to prevent water vapor, especially again here in Tennessee. It's very super wet all the time, especially in the soil. Water vapors come up over time. I can't tell you how many older homes I've gotten underneath and they just haven't had a vapor barrier down in like 20-30 years, and you'll get that microbial growth, and without a vapor barrier it speeds that process up of growing and going from like this white chalky stuff that's not an issue really to like that really dark black stuff that really starts to eat at your wood. And then there's time I've been under one where I could just poke my finger right through most of the joists under there and stuff like that. So vapor barrier, super cheap thing, and again it's on probably 85-90% of my reports just as a recommendation. And it's a very long-term thing, but if you keep up with that and you keep that underneath in your crawl space, it blows my mind sometimes like home inspectors don't get underneath crawl spaces because it's like,
oh my god,
to me I'm like that's
I don't know how you can do your job and not get on the crawl space.
It's the meat and potatoes of a home, man.
Yeah,
it's to me that's all usually the bigger items that we're looking at. It's
that roof,
absolutely.
The probably the HVAC system are top 3 as far as like expensive fixes too.
For sure.
Dude, we so in our other previous business we did some encapsulations.
Yeah.
So we've been in hundreds of crawl spaces.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I cannot tell you, it's because we did the encapsulations, which is obviously not cheap.
Yeah.
But for me, like it's so difficult to convince somebody to spend $15,000 encapsulating their crawl space. Because it's not, you can't show it off to your neighbor. It's not cool. But it is so daggum important to the health of the home.
Oh, absolutely. It's so funny because home inspecting turned me into like a home nerd where like all my buddies are talking about like, hey, I'm saving up for this like $30,000 for like this nice ass truck, man. And I'm just like, yeah, I'm gonna save up like $15,000 and encapsulate my crawl space.
That would be a big time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dude,
I'm like,
that's because
I just want, like that's something I'm like, I just want the whole thing encapsulated.
I know, dude. And then it's like out of your head. Because mine isn't encapsulated.
Yeah.
And for years, I just preached to customers like, "Hey, you should probably encapsulate."
Yeah.
It's true, but I'm like, I don't have that money.
Oh, I know. There's a lot of things I preach. That. You go to my house, you'd be like, "Wait, what?"
Well, it's kind of like, dude, it's like the landscaper has the worst lawn in the neighborhood.
Oh
he's
yeah,
like
absolutely.
Sick of cutting
absolutely. That's what I tell my wife. I tell people that too. I'm like, I see it all day. The last thing I want to do is come home and be like,
do it.
Yeah, and do it.
Yeah, dude. Amen.
Yeah.
Ugh. How did you, looking at some of the business stuff, and then we'll get a little bit into particularly like your company.
Yeah.
How did you start marketing your company? Was it mainly networking and stuff, or how did that work?
So I kind of thought it. I thought like, all right, I'll get a really big social media presence, stuff like that, and it just wasn't. And I started with like lead-based services too. Like, the issue with that is, especially when you're starting off, is like, I was paying for leads that like ended up like somebody had already scheduled they already had an inspector by the time I got the call, and then whether it wasn't explained to me right or I just didn't understand when they were first telling me, like I got this $500 bill and I was like, what? So I called them like, what is this for? I haven't gotten a job, and they're like, oh no, like if you get the lead you have to pay for it.
Who was that from?
That was from it's not Andrew, it's
Thumbtack?
No, it's man, that's gonna kill me. I should have came prepared with what that was. It was man, I have to ask my wife. It's something it's not my own. It's something home. I'm trying to remember. Home
Is it particular to the home inspection industry?
No, it's a whole home services app. Man,
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
That pain is real, dude, which is why we set out to beat that, because it's a problem. But anyway, so you started with that, and then we're like, okay, this is not clear.
Yeah, and that's why I told my wife, I'm like, this is probably not the... So I ended up just going boots on the ground, just kind of just getting out there. I live currently up in Clarksville right now, so I started up there. Just kind of thought there's a big military... community up there and stuff like that, so it's kind of always stays kicking up there. It's always kind of moving. So just went out to real estate offices. Realtor is my bread and butter.
Big time.
Just consistent referrals that I always get. So I just went in and I asked if I could sponsor any kind of events, whether it's like their monthly marketing meeting, stuff like that. Just getting myself 10 minutes to talk in front of them, and then you can kind of like you strike up a conversation with one. you ask them if they want to go coffee, and then you can kind of, it's all building relationship. That's really what it is. So I found that it's funny in the day and age we live in, how, you know, everything's social media and stuff like that. I've actually, for my business personally, just building actual physical relationships with people and actually like getting in front of their face and just having a conversation with them. And it goes a long way. Like this past Saturday, actually, I did an open house with a realtor, and it was great. It was awesome. We just talked to people would come in every once in a while, but just being able to talk to them for 3 hours and kind of pick their brain on stuff. They pick my brain, and
people do business with the people they know and like and trust. You know?
Absolutely. So
that's
really been my bread and butter, and it'll probably be my bread and butter from here on out. It's just, now it's more referral based, which is nice. Like it just kind of generates on its own. Realtors are like, I'll get some.
They kind of spread the word for you.
Yeah, they kind of If you do it, that's why it sounds weird, but it's almost like if you do right by realtors, they'll usually do the work for you. Mostly.
Do a good job. Yeah, be a good person, do a good job.
Absolutely,
you'll have no problem.
So
that's we did a lot of like the networking stuff when we started the restoration business, and it was my only thing is I wish I would have started sooner. Yeah, me too. You know, and joined those groups and just did that.
Yeah, and then joined BNI for Nashville. I had a great thing up in Clarksville, and I was like, man, I gotta get into Nashville. I just happened to meet somebody who was in a BNI group. Join a networking group. Any entrepreneur out there, I would just recommend. Just, you don't have to do it the entire time you're in business. You can. But at least at some point, especially when you're starting off, just get into a networking group, meet the people you can meet. Especially in home services.
Big time, dude.
Super.
And I think to add on to that, I think it's, I remember, I won't say like who it was, but I remember when I first joined BNI, I was having these like meetings, these one-to-ones, and I was like, man, how is this person going to help my business? Because it was just so far off from what we did. Right. And I went in there, and it turned out that she had a really, really close relationship with somebody who was in charge of like all the maintenance in the government buildings in Nashville, and you're just like, okay, like this. Yeah. No, all right, I got it. Like, you never know who you're kind of talking to.
Absolutely. I thought it was like a weird pyramid scheme thing when I first when the guy first explained. Yeah, and I'm like, that was weird, man. Like, but like, I did a Zoom meeting with them, and like that first Zoom meeting, I met an owner of a broker of a real estate, and then just talking to him, and I was just like, he's like, yeah, come by, man, like me, and like I still work with them now to this day, and like from there, I told my wife, I'm like, I think it's at least worth a shot. Yeah, we'll see it. I think that you're throwing a lot of things at a wall trying to see what stick. That's right. And I will say, like, that's stuck, and I just left for the moment. It's not anything bad with the networking group. It's just kind of where I'm at with my business, but it was amazing for the 4 years I was in it. I've made so many. It's things too outside of what I do with home inspecting. Like there's just like my personal life, like getting set up with like a financial planner. Like I would have never thought. Yeah. I'm getting a financial planner, like stuff like that. Insurance people. Just there's so many people you meet that like it just kind of broadens you as a person.
Yeah. It creates that community too. I was we just moved. I just moved to Nashville and started my business, so I knew nobody. Yeah. So it was a great way to kind of like force me into a community where I could kind of grow my business.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was killer, dude. Last question, because we're running out of time.
For sure.
What's the one differentiator that you guys like to say, hey, this is why you should go with y'all for your home inspection?
Yeah, so again, like all home inspectors are going to be like, hey, we do a great thorough job and stuff like that. Like, yes, I do. Right. Super thorough, going through everything. My biggest thing, I think, customer service is just as key to my business as the knowledge I have to have as a home inspector. And when I say customer service, it's not like, hey, how are you? Welcome to the... Like, it's more of like bringing your knowledge down to a homeowner's level, no matter where they are. And like, if they're a first-time home buyer, if they've owned 5 homes, like just finding where their level is of understanding, bringing that down to them just to let them know, like, this spot that you're in, it's not as like nerve-wracking, especially first-time home buyers. They're my favorite because like usually they come in and they're like
and you can kind of calm them down.
Nervous, yeah.
Talking about differentiators, you got the new homeowner. Yeah. Give them the report the night before. You're talking to them, going through everything the next day.
Absolutely, yeah. So every client, I always touch base, whether that's at the inspection to walk through all my findings, or if they can't be there, it's on the phone, and it's walking through the report, and it's just going through every little thing. They're gonna have a million questions usually of like, hey, how big is this issue that you're pointing out? They think every issue that I point out is huge, where really it's like there's 3 items that I'm like, hey, these should probably get taken care of sooner than later.
Right.
So that stuff, like having them, they'll come into like, especially if I meet them on the phone, they'll read the report the night before. I can tell they're super tense when we get into like starting like walkthrough of a report, and then by the time they leave, they're like, I love when you hear, oh, it's really not that bad.
Yeah,
and you're like,
yeah,
absolutely, yeah, and you're like, no, it's really not. There's just a couple items that, hey, you know, however you want to do your next steps or your negotiating process, but it's a great home. Like I always say there's no perfect home, or no home's perfect, but it doesn't mean it's not the perfect home for you.
Yeah,
Again,
putting them at ease.
Absolutely. Like, it's tough, man. I completely understand, especially because I've bought and sold like 3 or 4 homes, so I know how that process is so like
it sucks.
full with anxiety. So I completely understand, like, depending on how many homes you looked at, you finally found one, and all of a sudden here comes this guy being like, this home has got all these things wrong with it. I completely understand. So it's just that. It's really helping people, just portraying my knowledge onto them without talking over them of like, here's all these fancy terms I know, and like stuff like that. And that's what I think makes people kind of more anxiety filled and stuff.
Giving them like I don't want to say like a layman's term, but like just having a normal conversation about what's important in the home.
It's not like I say talking. It's not talking down or anything like that, right? It's just It's just having like just a normal conversation.
Hey, this is where you should be concerned, or this is where you shouldn't.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is fix it in the next year. This is fix it in the next week.
Absolutely. I love that too, because their points are usually like stuff they'll bring it to me, and I'll just be like, oh yeah, that's really not. I always tell them. I see that 95% of the homes we see down here.
There you go.
In Tennessee, and it's a completely normal thing. It's just a dependency if you want to live with it or not.
Right.
You kind of guys decide that, and that usually helps them out.
You're good to go.
Yeah. So.
Well, Devin, dude, I appreciate you coming in, man.
I appreciate you having me, man.
Yeah, dude, and I just got to say, I respect the entrepreneur game so much, especially in these industries. It's tough, so congrats on the 5 years.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
huge.
And good luck with everything you guys are doing, man. This
thank
is
you.
Really cool. I think it's super important, just getting the right people in front of homeowners and stuff like that. So
really and cool. Like to your point, we're trying to do the exact same thing, which is like, hey, my home should give you some peace of mind.
Absolutely.
When you're maintaining your home, because there's so much that people don't know.
That's awesome.
And you don't have to be an expert if you kind of have an expert at your fingertips, which is what our whole goal is.
That's awesome, man.
Devin, dude, nice to meet you in person.
Hey, you as well, man. Thank you.